I'm Samantha, 35, and I never thought my own sister Rachel would betray me like this. After my divorce, that $56,000 inheritance was supposed to secure my daughter Emma's future. Instead, it vanished, along with my trust. The worst part? My 9-year-old was the one who uncovered the devastating truth behind Rachel's lies. Before I dive into this heartbreaking story, let me know where you're watching from. If someone close has ever betrayed you, drop a like and subscribe because what my daughter discovered changed everything. Growing up, Rachel was always my protector. 3 years older and infinitely wiser, at least that's what I believed for most of my life. We shared everything: clothes, secrets, dreams. When I got chicken pox in 3rd grade, Rachel stayed home from school for a week to watch Disney movies with me, even though she'd already had it. During my first heartbreak at 16, she drove me to the beach at midnight just so I could scream at the ocean. And when I walked down the aisle at 24, Rachel was right beside me as my maid of honor, crying harder than our mother. That's why, when my world shattered last year, Rachel was the first person I called. The divorce wasn't entirely unexpected. Brian and I had been growing apart for years, but I'd stayed, convinced that Emma needed both parents under the same roof. When I caught him with his coworker in our bed, that illusion crumbled. What I didn't anticipate was how viciously he'd fight to minimize child support, hiding assets, and claiming financial hardship while simultaneously planning a vacation to Bali with his new girlfriend. "He's such a piece of work," Rachel said, pouring me another glass of wine in her immaculate kitchen. Her house was everything mine wasn't: spacious, beautifully decorated, and paid for. While I'd chosen to be a teacher and then stepped back to part-time after Emma was born, Rachel had climbed the corporate ladder in finance, becoming a senior investment advisor by 30. Her husband James, an architect, completed their picture-perfect life. "I don't know how I'm going to make ends meet," I admitted that night, my voice cracking. "The child support barely covers after-school care, and my part-time salary at the school isn't enough for our mortgage." Rachel reached across the granite island and squeezed my hand. "You'll figure it out, Sammy. You always do." But this time was different. I was drowning in attorney fees, facing a mountain of debt, and solely responsible for a child who deserved so much better than the life I could provide on my own. Then, as if the universe recognized my desperation, a lifeline appeared. Our grandmother Martha passed away. While the loss devastated us both, she'd practically raised us after Mom went back to work. She left behind an unexpected gift, $56,000 for each of her granddaughters. "It's like she knew," I whispered at the reading of the will, tears streaming down my face. Rachel nodded, her arm around my shoulders. "Grandma always did have a sixth sense." For the first time in months, I could breathe. This money wouldn't solve everything, but it meant Emma could stay in our home. It meant a college fund. It meant security. "You should let me help you invest it," Rachel offered as we left the lawyer's office. "At least a portion of it. The market's been good to my clients, and you could grow that money for Emma's future." The suggestion made perfect sense. Finance was Rachel's world, not mine. I trusted her completely. "That would be amazing," I said, relief washing over me. "I have no idea what I'm doing with this kind of money." Within a week, we'd set up an account. Rachel explained the investment strategy, using terms that went over my head. I nodded along, grateful for her expertise. She suggested keeping the account under her management to avoid unnecessary fees and promised quarterly updates. "You focus on rebuilding your life," she said. "I'll take care of growing Emma's future." And for a while, everything seemed fine. I used a small portion of the inheritance to catch up on bills, repair our aging roof, and buy Emma the new bedroom furniture she'd been wanting. The rest, $56,000, went into the account Rachel managed. The first few months passed in a blur of adjusting to single motherhood. Emma struggled with the divorce, having nightmares and acting out at school. I threw myself into being both parents, attending every soccer practice, helping with homework, and trying to create a new normal. Rachel checked in regularly, inviting us for Sunday dinners and occasionally taking Emma 4 girls' days to give me a break. But around 6 months after setting up the investment account, I noticed subtle changes in Rachel's behavior. She began canceling our dinners last minute. When I asked about the account during a family birthday party, she quickly changed the subject. Texts about financial matters went unanswered for days. "Just busy with work," she'd say with a dismissive wave. "You know how it gets at quarter's end." I did know. Rachel's job had always been demanding. But something felt different. When I mentioned wanting to put another $5,000 into Emma's college fund from a small bonus I'd received, Rachel discouraged me. "The market's volatile right now," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Let's wait." That was the first time I felt a chill of uncertainty. Rachel had always been aggressive with investments, encouraging calculated risks. This sudden conservatism didn't fit. By the 8-month mark, I still hadn't seen a single statement for the account. Each time I brought it up, Rachel had an excuse. The statements were quarterly, they were sent electronically to her work email, she'd bring them next time. But next time never came. The breaking point came during a family dinner at our mother's house. Emma was playing in the backyard with our cousin's kids, giving the adults time to talk. I decided to be direct. "Rach, I really need to see those account statements," I said, keeping my voice casual as I passed her the mashed potatoes. "For tax purposes." Rachel's hand froze midair. For a split second, something flashed across her face, panic? But it disappeared so quickly I thought I'd imagined it. "Of course," she said with a tight smile. "I've been meaning to go through them with you. Things have just been so hectic." Mom looked up from her plate. "Everything okay with the money Grandma left, girls?" "Everything's fine," Rachel answered too quickly. "Samantha's portion is growing nicely. We're taking a conservative approach." I noticed she didn't provide any specifics, no numbers, no percentages, no details about the investments themselves. "Great," I pressed. "So can we go through the statements this week? Maybe Wednesday after I pick up Emma from school?" Rachel took a long sip of water. "This week is impossible. End of quarter reports are due. But next week for sure. I promise I'll bring everything." I nodded, but uneasiness had taken root in my stomach. That night, after putting Emma to bed, I called my best friend Melissa. "Am I being paranoid?" I asked after explaining the situation. "Rachel's always been the financially responsible one." "Probably nothing," Melissa agreed. "But it's your money, Sam. There's nothing wrong with wanting to see how it's doing." "I know. I just don't want her to think I don't trust her." "Then frame it that way. Tell her you're interested in learning more about investing, that you want to understand what she's doing with the money." The suggestion made sense. The next morning, I sent Rachel a text. "Hey, really interested in understanding my investment portfolio better. Can you walk me through it when we meet next week? Want to learn from the best." Her response came hours later, "Sure thing." Just 2 words. From my sister, who typically sent paragraph-long texts complete with emojis and GIFs. Another red flag. That afternoon, I tried something else. Rachel had set up online access for me when we opened the account, but I'd never used it, trusting her to handle everything. I dug through my desk drawer and found the initial paperwork with the account number. After several attempts at guessing the password, Emma's birthday, my birthday, our grandmother's name, I clicked Forgot Password. The recovery email displayed was Rachel's work address. I had no way to reset it. With growing anxiety, I called the bank directly. "I'd like to check on an investment account," I told the representative, providing the account number. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but it appears your access to this account has been modified," the woman said after a few moments. "You're listed as the beneficiary, but account statements and correspondence go to the primary account holder." "But it's my money," I said, my voice rising. "I should have access. According to our records, you authorized these settings when the account was established. If you'd like to make changes, both you and the primary account holder would need to come into a branch together with identification. I ended the call, my hands shaking. I distinctly remembered signing papers, but Rachel had explained everything. A week of radio silence from Rachel felt like an eternity. Never in our relationship had she ignored me for so long. Every possible scenario ran through my mind. Was she in trouble? Was she hiding something? Was I blowing this out of proportion? The timing couldn't have been worse. My aging Honda decided that moment to need a new transmission, a $2,400 repair I hadn't budgeted for. And Emma's school announced a mandatory field trip to Washington, D.C. for all fourth graders, requiring a $350 deposit by the end of the month. Under normal circumstances, I would have dipped into the inheritance money for these expenses. That had been the plan, keep most of it invested for Emma's college, but have enough accessible for emergencies and educational opportunities. Now I found myself using my nearly maxed-out credit card instead. After dropping Emma at school on Monday morning, I drove to Rachel's suburban home rather than my classroom. I'd called in a substitute teacher for the day, something I rarely did. This couldn't wait any longer. Rachel's silver BMW wasn't in the driveway, but her husband James's truck was. I hadn't planned on confronting James, this was between my sister and me, but his unexpected presence left me with little choice. He answered the door in sweatpants and a faded university t-shirt, looking surprised to see me. "Sam? What are you doing here?" "Looking for Rachel," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "She hasn't been answering my calls or texts." James frowned. "She left for Chicago yesterday. Banking conference." "Didn't she tell you?" "No," I said, the knot in my stomach tightening. "She didn't mention it." "Come in," he offered, stepping aside. "I can make coffee." I followed him into their kitchen, the same space where Rachel had offered to manage my inheritance months earlier. Everything looked the same, yet somehow different. Perhaps it was my own perception that had changed. "Is everything okay between you two?" James asked, measuring coffee grounds. I hesitated. I didn't want to put James in the middle, but I also needed answers. "Has Rachel seemed different to you lately?" He paused, his back to me. "Different how?" "Distracted. Secretive, maybe." James turned around, leaning against the counter. Something in his expression made my heart sink. "You've noticed too, then. So she has been acting strange." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "The past few months have been challenging. Rachel's been working late constantly, taking these sudden business trips. When she is home, she's glued to her phone." "Have you asked her about it?" "Of course. She says it's work pressure." "But..." He trailed off. "But what, James?" He looked uncomfortable. "It's probably nothing. Just, there have been some unusual expenses. A weekend at Foxwoods Resort, she said, was a client meeting. A new designer handbag collection. She just bought a Peloton bike she hasn't even used." My blood ran cold. Rachel and James had always been financially conservative, despite their good incomes. Designer shopping sprees weren't Rachel's style. "Has she mentioned anything about my grandmother's inheritance?" I asked carefully. "The money she's managing for me?" "Not specifically, no." James furrowed his brow. "Is that what this is about? Is something wrong with the investment account?" "I don't know," I admitted. "That's what I've been trying to find out. She won't show me any statements or give me access to the account." James set a mug of coffee in front of me, his expression troubled. "That doesn't sound like Rachel." But it was Rachel. My sister, who had apparently been taking secret casino trips and buying luxury items while ignoring my increasingly desperate messages. I left James with more questions than answers, and a growing sense of dread. On impulse, I drove straight to Rachel's investment firm downtown. The receptionist informed me that Rachel was indeed out of town but offered to let me speak with her assistant. "I just need to check on my account," I told the young man who introduced himself as Tyler. I'm Rachel Wilson's sister. Of course, Ms. Wilson has mentioned you, he said politely. Unfortunately, without her authorization, I can't access client information. Even for family. I nodded, having expected this response. When will she be back from Chicago? Tyler blinked. Chicago? Ms. Wilson isn't in Chicago. She took personal time off. She's not due back until Thursday. The floor seemed to shift beneath me. Rachel had lied to her own husband about where she was. This was no longer about missed calls or delayed account statements. Something was seriously wrong. From the investment firm, I drove directly to my bank. Not Rachel's bank where the investment account was held, I'd already hit that dead end, but my own local branch where I'd deposited my portion of the inheritance before transferring it to Rachel's management. I need to see the transfer records for this account, I told the teller, sliding over my ID and account number. 20 minutes later, I sat in a small office with the branch manager, staring at a printout that confirmed my worst fears. A transfer of $56,000 had gone out to the account number Rachel had provided. I'd believed that money was being invested for Emma's future. Now I wasn't sure of anything. I need to see what's happening with that money, I explained to the manager. But I don't seem to have access to the account. She frowned. The receiving institution should have required your ID and signature for account access provisions. They did, but I think I may have signed something different than what I was told. The implication hung heavy in the air. The manager's expression softened with sympathy. I would recommend visiting the other bank in person with your ID and the original transfer information. If you're named on the account in any capacity, they should at least be able to tell you the current balance. I took her advice, driving across town to the bank where Rachel had set up the investment account. After proving my identity and explaining my situation to 3 different employees, I was finally seated across from a personal banking manager. Yes, I can see you're listed as the beneficiary on this account, she confirmed after typing on her computer. While I can't give you transaction details without the primary account holder's permission, I can confirm the current balance. I held my breath. The account currently holds $4,236.12. The room spun. From $56,000 to barely over $4,000? Even accounting for the small withdrawals I'd made for the roof repair and Emma's furniture, that meant nearly $50,000 was gone. There must be some mistake, I whispered. Could it be invested elsewhere? In stocks or bonds or something? The manager shook her head. This isn't an investment account, Ms. Adams. It's a standard checking account. Not an investment account. No stocks, no bonds, no carefully managed portfolio for Emma's future. Just a regular checking account that had been systematically drained. Can you tell me when the most recent withdrawal was made? I asked, my voice barely audible. She hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. The most recent transaction was a withdrawal of $3,500 3 days ago. 3 days ago. While Rachel was ignoring my increasingly frantic messages, she had withdrawn another $3,500 of my money. My inheritance. Emma's future. I stumbled to my car and sat there, unable to drive, tears blurring my vision. The full weight of the betrayal crashed over me. My own sister had stolen from me. From her niece. She had lied, manipulated, and taken advantage of my trust during the most vulnerable period of my life. I had never felt so alone. I spent the night alternating between numbness and rage, barely sleeping. By morning, I'd made a decision. No more unanswered calls. No more evasions. I would confront Rachel face to face, no matter what. After dropping Emma at school with a forced smile that didn't reach my eyes, I drove directly to Rachel's office building in downtown Hartford. The receptionist recognized me from the previous day. Is Rachel Wilson in today? I asked, already knowing she wasn't due back until Thursday. No, but, she began. I cut her off. When do you expect her? Actually, the receptionist lowered her voice, she just called in. She's back early and coming in for a client meeting at 11. 2 hours. I could wait 2 hours. I found a coffee shop across the street and positioned myself by the window, watching the entrance to Rachel's building like a hawk. At 10:45, her silver BMW pulled into the parking garage. My heart hammered against my ribs as I crossed the street and rode the elevator to the 12th floor. This time, I didn't stop at reception. I walked straight through to the office area. Rachel was setting her purse down on her desk when I appeared in her doorway. She looked up, her face registering shock. "Sam? What are you doing here?" "We need to talk," I said flatly. "Now." She glanced at her watch. "I have a client coming in 15 minutes. Cancel it." Something in my tone must have conveyed the gravity of the situation. Rachel studied my face, then slowly reached for her phone. "Tyler, please reschedule my 11 o'clock. "Yes, a family emergency." "Thanks." She gestured to the small meeting room adjacent to her office. "In here." Once the door closed behind us, Rachel turned to me. "What's going on?" "You're scaring me." "That's rich," I said with a bitter laugh. "I'm scaring you? After you've ignored me for a week? After you've been lying to me for months?" "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but her eyes darted away. I placed my hands flat on the table between us to stop them from shaking. "Where's my money, Rachel?" "It's in the investment account." "I told you." "Stop lying." My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. "I went to the bank. There's no investment account. There never was. Just a checking account with barely $4,000 left in it." Rachel's face drained of color. She sank into a chair. "You went to the bank?" "Of course I went to the bank. You were ignoring me, and I needed access to my money." "I can explain," she whispered. "Please do. Explain how my $56,000 disappeared. Explain why you lied about an investment account. Explain the casino trips and designer shopping that your husband doesn't know about." Her head snapped up. "You talked to James?" "Yes, I talked to James. While you were supposedly at a conference in Chicago that your assistant knows nothing about." Rachel pressed her fingers to her temples. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. "Almost." "I was going to pay it back," she finally said. "All of it?" "With interest." "Pay it back?" I repeated incredulously. "So you admit you took it? You stole from me?" "I didn't steal," she protested. "I borrowed." "There's a difference." "Not when you do it without permission." I was shouting now, beyond caring who might hear. "Not when you lie about it. Not when it's your sister's only financial safety net after a divorce." Rachel's face hardened unexpectedly. "You have no idea what real financial pressure is like, Samantha. You with your teaching job and your perfect little house and your perfect little family." I stared at her in disbelief. "My perfect family? My husband cheated on me and left me as a single mother. How is that perfect?" "At least you got to have a family," she shot back, tears suddenly streaming down her face. "Do you know how much fertility treatments cost? Do you know what it's like to want a baby so desperately that you'll try anything? 3 rounds of IVF. $40,000. And nothing." I sat back, stunned. Rachel and James had been trying to have a baby? She had never said a word. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice softer. "Because you have everything I ever wanted," she said bitterly. "A child. A house. Even when your marriage fell apart, you still had Emma. And then Grandma left us both the same amount, even though you already had everything." Her words felt like a physical blow. All these years, I'd thought Rachel had the perfect life, career success, financial stability, a loving marriage. I'd never imagined she was suffering silently through failed fertility treatments, watching me parent Emma with envy. But understanding her pain didn't excuse her actions. So you took my money for more treatments? I asked. Rachel looked away. It started that way. The first withdrawal was for another consultation. But then, I don't know. Something changed. I felt like I deserved some happiness too. A weekend away. Nice things. Chances to win back what I'd taken. Gambling, I said flatly. You gambled away my daughter's college fund. I had some big wins, she protested. At one point, I was up enough to replace everything I'd taken. But then, you lost it all. She nodded miserably. Rachel, do you realize what you've done? That money wasn't just mine. It was Emma's future. My safety net. You've always had everything handed to you, she snapped, her vulnerability suddenly replaced by defensiveness. Even as kids, you were mom and dad's favorite. The pretty one. The talented one. The one with all the friends. I had to work twice as hard for half the recognition. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This bitter, jealous woman was unrecognizable to me. This wasn't my protective big sister, this was someone consumed by resentment I'd never known existed. I worked hard for everything I have, I said, my voice shaking. And now, thanks to you, I have $4,000 left of my inheritance. How am I supposed to send Emma to college? How am I supposed to trust anyone again when my own sister could do this to me? I told you I'll pay it back, Rachel insisted. I just need time. How? More gambling? More lies? I stood up. I want a signed statement acknowledging what you took. And a payment plan. The drive to the police station felt surreal. I'd never imagined filing a report against my own sister, yet here I was, clutching bank statements and transfer records like armor against the disbelief I knew I'd face. Let me get this straight, said Detective Morales, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a gentle voice. You're alleging your sister misappropriated your inheritance funds? Yes, I said, sliding the bank statements across the desk. She was supposed to invest it. Instead, she put it in a regular checking account and withdrew almost all of it for personal use. And you authorized her to manage this money? I swallowed hard. I thought I was authorizing her to invest it. She works in finance. I trusted her. The detective's expression remained neutral, but I sensed skepticism. Did you have any written agreement about how this money would be handled? No, I admitted. She's my sister. I didn't think I needed one. After 2 hours of questions, document reviews, and statement taking, Detective Morales explained the reality of my situation. This falls into a gray area between theft and civil dispute, she said. Because you willingly transferred the money and made her an account holder, proving criminal intent is difficult. The district attorney may see this as a family matter best resolved in civil court. So she gets away with stealing $50,000? I asked incredulously. I didn't say that, the detective corrected. We'll investigate. But you should also consult a civil attorney. The following day, I met with Diane Levinson, a lawyer specializing in financial fraud. Her office was small but neat, with diplomas covering one wall and children's artwork on another. Family financial disputes are among the most painful cases I handle, she said after reviewing my documents. But unfortunately, they're also common. Can I get my money back? I asked, cutting to the chase. Possibly. We have evidence of fund transfers and withdrawals that don't benefit you. The fact that she misrepresented the account type strengthens the case. Diane leaned forward. But litigation is expensive and time-consuming. And there's another consideration. What's that? Collection. Even if we win a judgment, we can only collect what she has. If the money's truly gone, gambled away, spent on luxury items, recovering it could be difficult. I hadn't considered this aspect. The money might be irretrievable, regardless of legal outcomes. What's your recommendation? I asked. Start with a formal demand letter. Sometimes that's enough to trigger repayment. If not, we file suit. Meanwhile, the police investigation might pressure her as well. I left with a plan but little reassurance. Even if everything went perfectly, I'd likely recover only a fraction of what was taken. And the cost, not just financial, but emotional, would be enormous. The family fallout began almost immediately. My mother called that evening, her voice wavering between anger and distress. Rachel says you're pressing charges against her? That you're trying to destroy her career? Samantha, what are you thinking? Did she tell you why? I asked quietly. Did she tell you she stole almost $50,000 of my inheritance? Silence. Then, she said there was a misunderstanding about money she was investing for you. It wasn't a misunderstanding, Mom. She admitted taking it. For fertility treatments, shopping sprees, and gambling. Fertility treatments? My mother's voice softened. Oh, Samantha. You know how desperately she and James want children. The implication was clear, I already had Emma. Couldn't I understand Rachel's desperation? Couldn't I forgive? That doesn't give her the right to steal from us, I said firmly. That money was for Emma's education. For our future. The conversation ended with my mother promising to talk to Rachel and figure this out as a family. But I knew better. Lines had been drawn. And in many ways, my mother had already chosen sides. The next call came from James, Rachel's husband. Unlike my mother, he sounded genuinely shocked and horrified. Sam, I had no idea, he said, his voice rough. I swear to you. I knew things were tight because of the fertility treatments, but I never imagined she'd take your money. You mentioned Foxwoods, I reminded him. The designer bags. The Peloton. I thought she was just stress shopping. Blowing off steam. He paused. She's been different lately. Secretive. Defensive. Now I understand why. James's revelation confirmed what I'd begun to suspect. Rachel's behavior went beyond simple financial desperation. I think she might have a gambling problem, he said quietly. I found receipts from casinos all over New England. Multiple ATM withdrawals in single nights. Thousands of dollars. Have you confronted her? I asked. I tried. She completely shut down. Accused me of spying. Said I was trying to control her. His voice cracked. I don't recognize her anymore, Sam. Neither did I. The sister I'd idolized had become someone unrecognizable, someone who could steal, lie, and manipulate without remorse. The hardest conversation was with Emma. At 9 years old, she was perceptive enough to notice my distress despite my attempts to hide it. After days of forced smiles and evasive answers to her questions about why we hadn't seen Aunt Rachel lately, I knew I needed to provide some explanation. Sweetie, I began one evening as we sat on her bed for story time. I need to talk to you about something difficult. Emma looked up from her book, her brown eyes, so like Rachel's, wide with concern. Is it about why you've been crying at night? The question caught me off guard. I thought I'd been careful to hide my tears. You heard me? She nodded solemnly. Is it because of Daddy? No, honey. It's about Aunt Rachel. She and I are having a very serious disagreement. Did you fight? In a way. I searched for age-appropriate words to explain betrayal. Remember how Grandma Martha left us some money to help with your college fund? Emma nodded. For when I'm big. Well, I asked Aunt Rachel to help take care of that money, to make it grow for your future. But instead, she used it for herself. Without asking. Emma's brow furrowed. She took our money? That's stealing. The simplicity of a child's moral compass. No gray areas, no rationalizations. Yes, I admitted. It is. And now I'm trying to get it back, but it's complicated because she's family. But you always tell me stealing is wrong, no matter what, Emma insisted. It is, honey. That's why Aunt Rachel and I won't be seeing each other for a while. and why things might be a little tight financially for us. Emma was quiet for a moment, processing. Will I still be able to go to college? The question broke my heart. My 9-year-old shouldn't have to worry about such things. Yes, I promised, pulling her close. I'll make sure of it, one way or another. As days turned into weeks, the legal wheels turned slowly. The police investigation stalled without clear evidence of criminal intent. My attorney filed a civil suit, but Rachel hired her own lawyer who filed motion after motion to delay proceedings. The financial strain became increasingly difficult to manage. The remaining $4,000 from the inheritance went quickly: car repairs, Emma's field trip, a leaking water heater. I picked up extra tutoring hours after school, started driving for a food delivery service on weekends when Emma was with Brian, and cut every possible expense. Still, each month was a struggle. And with each passing day, my sense of isolation grew. My mother maintained awkward neutrality, clearly torn between her daughters. Extended family members took sides, often based on incomplete information. Friends tried to be supportive but couldn't truly understand the magnitude of the betrayal. The lowest point came when Emma asked why we couldn't go to her cousin's birthday party. Rachel's son Jake was turning 7, and Emma had been looking forward to the celebration at a local trampoline park. "Honey, we can't go to Jake's party," I explained gently. "Aunt Rachel and I aren't speaking right now." "But Jake's my cousin," Emma protested. "He didn't do anything wrong." She was right, of course. The children were innocent in this adult conflict. But the thought of facing Rachel, of making small talk while she wore designer clothes possibly purchased with Emma's college fund, was unbearable. "I'll talk to Uncle James," I promised. "Maybe we can arrange for you to see Jake another time." That night, as I sat alone at the kitchen table surrounded by bills and past due notices, the magnitude of Rachel's betrayal hit me anew. She hadn't just taken money. She'd taken security, peace of mind, family connections. "Mom, can you help me with my family tree project?" Emma asked one Saturday morning, about 3 months after my confrontation with Rachel. "Mrs. Garcia says we need photos of everyone." I looked up from my laptop where I'd been working on lesson plans. "Of course, sweetie. Let me find the photo albums." The family tree assignment seemed like cruel timing given our fractured family situation, but I was determined to help Emma complete it without letting my personal feelings interfere. We settled on the living room floor, surrounded by photo albums dating back to my childhood. Emma giggled at pictures of Rachel and me in matching outfits, with bowl cuts and missing teeth. "You and Aunt Rachel looked so much alike," she observed, tracing a finger over a Halloween photo where we were dressed as salt and pepper shakers. "We did," I agreed, swallowing the lump in my throat. "People often thought we were twins, even though she's 3 years older." "I miss her," Emma said softly, catching me off guard. "And Jake? Do you think we'll ever see them again?" "I don't know, honey." I couldn't bring myself to offer false hope. "It's complicated. Can I use this picture for my project?" She pointed to a photo from my wedding, Rachel and me, arms around each other, both beaming at the camera. "Of course." As we worked on organizing photos, Emma had another request. "Mrs. Garcia said we can use social media pictures too. Can I look at Aunt Rachel's Instagram for recent photos? She always posts pictures of Jake's soccer games." My instinct was to refuse. I'd unfollowed Rachel on all platforms, unable to bear seeing her life continue normally while mine had been upended. But this was for Emma's school project, not my personal feelings. "Okay," I agreed cautiously. "But let's use my iPad, and I'll help you find appropriate photos." I logged into Instagram on the iPad and handed it to Emma, sitting beside her as she navigated to Rachel's profile. I'd expected to feel angry seeing Rachel's carefully curated life, but instead, I felt oddly detached. These squares of filtered perfection seemed to belong to a stranger, not the sister I'd grown up with. "Look, there's Jake at his game," Emma said, pointing to a recent post. I nodded, helping her save the image for her project. As Emma scrolled through Rachel's feed, something caught my attention. A post from about 2 months ago, Rachel at what appeared to be a casino, cocktail in hand, designer handbag prominently displayed on the table beside her. Wait, Emma. Go back to that one. Emma tapped the photo, enlarging it. The caption read, Girls Weekend with the Work Crew. #VegasBaby #LuckyStreak. The timestamp was from a weekend when Rachel had told James she was at a financial conference in Boston. What's Vegas, Mom? Las Vegas. It's a city in Nevada where people go to gamble, I explained absently, my mind racing. Emma, can you scroll down a bit more? Let's see what other pictures Aunt Rachel has from the past few months. As Emma scrolled, a pattern emerged. Photos of Rachel at Foxwoods Resort. At Mohegan Sunday. At the Wynn in Las Vegas. All posted during times she'd claimed to be working or at industry events. All featuring expensive outfits, high-end restaurants, or casino floors. Mommy, why is Aunt Rachel in Las Vegas when she told Uncle James she was on business trips? Emma asked innocently. That doesn't look like business. Out of the mouths of babes. My daughter had just articulated exactly what had been nagging at me. That's a very good question, I said carefully. Sometimes adults don't tell the truth about where they're going. Emma's brow furrowed. But that's lying. You always say lying is wrong. It is, I agreed. Emma, would you mind if I looked through Aunt Rachel's Instagram for a few minutes? She handed me the iPad. Are you going to find more lies? Such perception from someone so young. I'm not sure. I just want to check something. What I found exceeded my worst suspicions. Rachel had been documenting her double life on social media, apparently confident that neither James nor I would see it. Posts showed her gambling at casinos all over the country, shopping sprees at high-end stores, weekend getaways with friends I'd never met. One post from 6 months ago, right around the time she would have made one of the largest withdrawals from my account, showed Rachel fanning out casino chips worth thousands of dollars. The caption, Easy Money. #on a roll #winning streak. My hands trembled as I continued scrolling. There was Rachel modeling a Gucci handbag. Rachel showing off Christian Louboutin shoes. Rachel in a luxury hotel suite with the caption, Living my best life. All purchased with my stolen inheritance. Mom? Emma's voice brought me back to reality. Why do you look so upset? I set the iPad down, trying to compose myself. I just found some pictures that help me understand something that's been confusing me. Emma picked up the iPad again, scrolling further through Rachel's feed. Suddenly, she gasped. Mom. Look. She turned the screen toward me. There was Rachel at what appeared to be a blackjack table, chips piled high beside her. The caption made my blood run cold. They say money can't buy happiness, but it sure feels like it right now. Thanks for the investment, sis. #LuckyCharm. The post was dated just days after I'd transferred the inheritance money to her. What does she mean investment? Emma asked. Is she talking about our college money? I took a deep breath. I think she might be, honey. Emma's face clouded with understanding beyond her years. She used our money to gamble? And buy fancy things? It looks that way. That's why we've been eating spaghetti so much and you've been working extra jobs, Emma said, putting the pieces together. Because Aunt Rachel took our money. I pulled her into a hug, heartbreaking at how much she'd noticed despite my efforts to shield her. I'm sorry you've had to worry about that. I'm not a baby, Mom. I know things have been hard. I looked at my daughter, this incredible, perceptive, compassionate little person, and felt a surge of determination. Rachel's betrayal had forced me to work harder, budget tighter, and worry more. But it had also underestimated the resourcefulness of a mother protecting her child's future. Emma, would you mind if I took some screenshots of these posts? They might help us get our money back. Emma nodded solemnly. Take all the pictures you need. And Mom? Yes, sweetie? I think Aunt Rachel has a problem. Like Joey's dad who had to go to special meetings because he couldn't stop drinking. Out of the mouths of babes, indeed. My 9-year-old had just identified what the adults in Rachel's life had been dancing around: addiction. I think you might be right, I said softly. Over the next hour, I methodically documented every post that showed Rachel gambling or displaying expensive purchases during the period she'd been withdrawing money from my account. The timestamps, locations, and captions created a damning timeline of deception. Most tellingly, the gambling post stopped abruptly around the time I'd confronted Rachel, replaced by vague inspirational quotes and carefully staged family photos. The performance of a perfect life had continued, but the documentation of her secret activities had ceased. When I called my attorney that evening, she was cautiously optimistic. Social media posts aren't conclusive evidence of fraud on their own, Diane warned, but they establish a pattern of behavior that corresponds with the withdrawals. Combined with the bank records, this strengthens our case considerably. I also forwarded screenshots to Detective Morales, who responded that this new information might help establish criminal intent. The final piece of evidence came from an unexpected source. Emma, continuing to work on her family project, asked to look at Jake's birthday photos on James's Facebook page. "Mom, look at this," she exclaimed, pointing to a video James had posted from Jake's birthday 2 months earlier. In the background of the party video, barely visible but unmistakable, was Rachel arguing with someone on her phone. The camera had accidentally captured audio of her saying, "I'll get the money. I just need more time." The 50 was just a temporary setback. 50,000. My 50,000. "Emma," I said carefully, "you've just found some very important information." Like a detective. She beamed with pride. "Really? Really? You've helped more than you know." That night, after Emma was asleep, I sat in the kitchen with all the evidence spread before me: bank statements, withdrawal records, screenshots of social media posts, and now this video accidentally captured by James. My 9-year-old daughter had unintentionally exposed the full extent of Rachel's deception. Through her innocent Instagram browsing and family project research, Emma had uncovered what the adults in Rachel's life had either missed or denied. The realization was both empowering and heartbreaking. With this evidence, I could strengthen both the civil and criminal cases against Rachel. But the fact remained: my sister was clearly in the grip of a gambling addiction that had driven her to betray her family, risk her career, and potentially destroy her marriage. The Rachel I'd grown up with, The legal proceedings moved with surprising speed once the new evidence came to light. Detective Morales called 3 days after I sent her the screenshots and video. "The district attorney has reviewed your case and believes we have sufficient evidence to pursue criminal charges," she explained. "The social media posts, particularly the one thanking you for the investment, demonstrate clear intent to misappropriate funds." "What happens now?" I asked, torn between relief that Rachel would face consequences and dread about what those consequences might be. "We'll be bringing her in for formal questioning. Given the amount involved, she's looking at potential felony charges. I'd suggest you prepare yourself, this won't be easy for anyone involved." She was right. Nothing about the next few weeks was easy. Rachel was arrested and charged with felony theft and fraud. The local newspaper ran a small article about a prominent financial advisor facing criminal charges. Rachel's firm placed her on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. Our mother called me sobbing, begging me to drop the charges. "She'll lose everything, Samantha. Her career, possibly her marriage." "Is that what you want?" "What I want," I replied, keeping my voice steady, "is for my daughter's college fund to be restored. What I want is for Rachel to get help for her gambling addiction. And what I want is for her to face the consequences of her actions." "She's your sister," Mom pleaded. "Yes, she is. And I'm her sister too." That didn't stop her from stealing from me and Emma. The civil case proceeded alongside the criminal one. With the new evidence, my attorney successfully petitioned the court to freeze Rachel's remaining assets to prevent further dissipation. Financial records revealed the devastating scope of her addiction, Tens of thousands lost at casinos, multiple maxed-out credit cards, secret loans, and a second mortgage on her house that James knew nothing about. The most difficult day was the first court appearance. I arrived at the courthouse unsure what to expect, my attorney beside me. When Rachel entered in a conservative navy suit, her eyes downcast, she looked smaller somehow. Diminished. The confident, successful sister I'd admired had been replaced by someone hollow, haunted. Our eyes met briefly across the courtroom. For a moment, I glimpsed something real in her expression: shame, regret, fear. Then the mask slipped back into place, and she looked away. After the proceedings, as we left the courthouse, James approached me. He looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and new lines etching his face. "Sam, can we talk?" We found a quiet bench in the courthouse plaza. For several minutes, we sat in silence, watching people hurry past. "I've left her," he finally said. "At least temporarily. I'm staying with my brother." "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. "Don't be. This isn't your fault." He ran a hand through his hair. "The gambling was just the beginning. There were lies about everything: where she was, who she was with, what she was spending. Our entire life together feels like a fabrication." "When did it start?" I asked. "The gambling? After the third failed IVF attempt, I think. The doctor told us our chances were minimal. Something broke in her that day." He paused. "But the lying? I don't know anymore. Maybe it was always there, and I just didn't want to see it." "I know exactly how you feel," I said softly. James turned to me, his expression earnest. "I want you to know I'm working with her attorney to liquidate our assets. The house, her car, investments. Whatever it takes to pay you back." "James, that's not—" "It is necessary," he interrupted firmly. "It's the right thing to do. And frankly, I can't live in that house anymore anyway. Too many memories." Before we parted, James handed me an envelope. "Rachel asked me to give you this." I haven't read it. I waited until I was alone in my car to open it. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Samantha. By the time you read this, you'll know everything. The theft, the gambling, the lies." I could offer explanations about how it started with fertility treatments, how the first casino visit was just to escape the pain, how winning felt like finally having control over something. But explanations aren't excuses. The truth is simpler and harder: I became someone I don't recognize. Someone who could steal from her own sister. Someone who could look her niece in the eye while depleting her college fund. Someone consumed by the next bet, the next win, the next escape. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I am asking for a chance to make amends. I'm entering a treatment program after the court proceedings. Whatever happens legally, I accept the consequences. They're long overdue. The money will be repaid, every cent, with interest. James is selling the house and my car. My retirement accounts will be liquidated. It won't be immediate, but it will happen. What I've stolen from you goes beyond money. Trust. Family. Security. Peace of mind. Those things can't be repaid with cash. I don't know if they can be repaid at all. But I have to try. I'm sorry, Sammy. More than words can express. Rachel." I sat in my car, tears streaming down my face, the letter trembling in my hands. This was the sister I remembered, taking responsibility, facing consequences head-on. But the damage had been done, and words alone couldn't repair it. The legal process continued its course. Rachel pleaded guilty to reduced charges in exchange for full restitution. The judge, recognizing her gambling addiction as a mitigating factor, sentenced her to probation, community service, and mandatory addiction treatment rather than jail time. The civil case was settled with a formal agreement: Rachel would repay the full $50,000 plus interest through the sale of assets and a structured payment plan spanning 3 years. The first installment, $20,000 from the sale of her car and liquidation of an investment account, arrived within weeks of the settlement. Seeing that money deposited into a new account I'd established for Emma's education brought a complex mixture of emotions: relief, vindication, sadness. It wasn't a victory. It was simply a step toward restoring what should never have been taken. Emma, with the resilience of childhood, processed the situation in her own way. She asked thoughtful questions about addiction, forgiveness, and consequences. She worried about her cousin Jake and asked if we could see him sometime. Aunt Rachel made really bad choices, she observed one evening as I tucked her in. But that doesn't mean she's a bad person forever, right? People can change? They can, I agreed. If they truly want to and work hard at it. Do you think she's working hard at it? I considered the reports I'd received about Rachel's dedication to her treatment program, her compliance with probation requirements, her efforts to make amends. I think she is. Then maybe someday we can be a family again, Emma said hopefully. Not the same as before, but maybe a new kind of family. The wisdom of children never ceased to amaze me. Emma, who had every right to feel betrayed and angry, was already contemplating forgiveness and reconciliation. Not from naivety, but from a place of genuine compassion and hope. Over the following months, we established a new normal. The financial strain eased with the restitution payments and my additional work. Emma thrived in school, showing particular interest in math and finance, ironically, Rachel's strengths as well. Rachel completed her initial intensive treatment program and transitioned to outpatient therapy. She sent regular updates through James, respecting my request for space. She found a new job at a smaller firm, with strict limitations on her financial responsibilities. She attended Gamblers Anonymous meetings 3 times weekly. 6 months after the court proceedings, I received an invitation. Rachel's treatment center was hosting a family reconciliation session. Attendance was voluntary. I struggled with the decision. Part of me wanted to maintain the protective distance I'd established. Another part recognized that healing, for all of us, might require facing this final challenge. After much consideration and a long conversation with Emma, I decided to attend. The session was held in a sunlit room at the treatment center. Rachel sat across from me, hands folded in her lap, her expression a mixture of hope and fear. A counselor facilitated our conversation, establishing ground rules and creating a safe space for difficult truths. I don't expect forgiveness, Rachel began, her voice steady despite her evident emotion. I just want you to know that I'm doing the work. Every day. To understand why I did what I did. To make sure I never hurt anyone like that again. Why? I asked simply. The question that had haunted me for months. Why me? Why Emma? Rachel took a deep breath. The easy answer is the addiction. But that's not the whole truth. She met my eyes directly. I've always been jealous of you, Samantha. Your natural confidence. Your ability to connect with people. Your beautiful daughter. When the fertility treatments failed and the gambling started, that jealousy twisted into something ugly. Taking your money felt like balancing the scales somehow. It's sick, I know. It makes no sense. But in my distorted thinking, I felt entitled to it. The raw honesty stunned me. This wasn't the defensive sister from our confrontation months ago. This was someone who had faced her darkest truths and was brave enough to speak them aloud. Thank you for being honest, I said finally. I can't say I understand completely, but it helps to hear the truth. We talked for nearly 2 hours, covering years of unspoken resentments, misunderstandings, and assumptions. The conversation wasn't easy, but it was necessary. By the end, we had reached no grand resolution, no tearful reconciliation. Just a fragile beginning. A possibility. As we prepared to leave, Rachel handed me a small box. For Emma, she explained. If you think it's appropriate. Later that evening, after Emma was in bed, I opened the package. Inside was a handcrafted wooden box with Emma's name engraved on the lid. A note explained that Rachel had made it in her woodworking therapy group. Inside the box was a single item, Rachel's childhood savings bank, a ceramic pig we had both coveted as children. For Emma's new college fund, the note read. A reminder that saving, not gambling, is how we build a future. With love, Aunt Rachel. The gesture brought fresh tears to my eyes. It wasn't the grand gestures of restitution that signaled Rachel's true remorse, but this small, meaningful acknowledgement of the specific harm she had caused. The path forward remained uncertain. Trust, once broken, couldn't be restored overnight, or perhaps ever completely. But understanding had replaced confusion. Truth had replaced deception. And the possibility of a new relationship, built on honesty rather than illusion, had emerged from the ashes of betrayal. Emma's accidental discovery had set in motion not just the recovery of stolen funds, but a painful, necessary journey of truth for our entire family. Her innocent question, "Mommy, why is Aunt Rachel in Las Vegas when she told Uncle James she was on business trips?" had pierced through years of secrets and self-deception. The money was being repaid. Rachel was confronting her addiction. I was rebuilding financial security for Emma's future. But the most valuable lesson from this painful chapter came from Emma herself, the understanding that while truth can hurt, it also heals. That families can fracture and still find new ways to connect. That betrayal, while devastating, need not be the end of the story. As I placed the ceramic pig on Emma's dresser for her